Glasgow Council to come and take the stand and give us her thoughts on how we defend our communities and our movement and what the impact of the austerity agenda is.
Okay, thanks Ross. I just want to say thanks to the Mona staff for inviting me along. I'm not a politician, I'm not a trade union leader, and I don't usually get the chance to speak at this kind of platform. I'm a trade union activist, like probably lots of people in this room, so I really welcome the opportunity to bring that voice into the discussion that we're having. Just to give you a wee idea about what I'm going to cover, I thought it would be useful to set a bit of context about where communities have found themselves and how that's developed. I wanted to share with you some of the strategies we've adopted in Glasgow Trades Council and why we've adopted them and what kind of success we've had. And also I wanted to share with you my views on the challenges that experience has brought and brings to the trade union movement in Scotland, and how my view the left should respond to the challenges of austerity. So, I mean, primarily my kind of key point is that we're building a movement here. We're not building another bureaucracy. We're building a movement. And that's the kind of underpin of my contribution. And I'd like to set some context, as I said. My political education began with the Morning Star because, like many people like you, I grew up in a house that the Morning Star was in. You know, I grew up in a Labour movement family. Interestingly, our Morning Star was delivered by a lovely man who wore a big Russian hat with a red star on it, much to the amusement of me and my sister. But I grew up in a steel community in Lanarkshire where there were plenty of trade union jobs in the 70s. And infrastructure had developed in that community. The Labour movement, the Labour Party, so if you wanted to change in that community or influence, you attended your local constituency Labour Party, whether that was the need for a local health centre, and that demand was often delivered. So there was no need for communities of mass resistance, frankly. And I lived in a class-conscious community, and those communities wielded power locally, and mostly that relationship between the Labour movement and the Labour Party worked. And even when Thatcher came along, the strongest shoulders were expected to burden the most, and so the trade union activists and their families also, quite often it was people who grew up in those families, so they understood the nature of the trade union movement, and they had the tools in the workplace. They'd understood the nature of the tools in the workplace, and they could use them in their communities. So most of them were the community activists. They ran the tenants groups, they ran the credit unions. So the Labour movement was still very visible. It resonated in our communities. And Thatcher came, and we saw a breakdown in the economic safeguards of collective bargaining, and an end to a working class that had a sense of power in those communities, really. And those communities changed. They were divided by council house sales, the increase in private ownership in housing, and the infrastructure that had been partly born out of people living side by side with relatively different economic experiences. That slowly disappeared. The economics of the free market became the recognised doctrine. Individuals were responsible for poverty. And the causes of poverty became the effects of poverty. And so you were poor and you were trapped in a cycle of poverty. and that became a responsibility of community. You know, the community almost were responsible for that cycle of poverty. And social policies reflected that. Greater means testings, qualifications being made for help and assistance, benefits attacked, the poor blamed for their poverty, education being seen as this massive tool for transformation. And the Labour Party, to a large extent, bought into that. And the local economic redistribution that had taken place previously, for instance, in our area, Strathclyde Regional Council had an economic, a social strategy which had actually involved the redistribution of money and resources through the social strategy in the 80s. That was replaced by health programmes, enterprise zones, and the marketisation of council strategies. So we could see local Labour at a local level kind of changing in the way that it saw challenging, making a better society, was kind of very much wrapped up in marketisation. And that formula of an articulate Labour movement and a connected Labour Party was starting to deteriorate. And communities had less and less faith in that party that had developed market solutions to social problems. So when austerity hit, the economic consequences of marketisation and financial deregulation resulted in the prescription of public sector cuts and a huge reduction in public funds. The narrative of a market solution and that the poor were to blame resonated in the national consciousness, and that included not only those on the right but those in the Labour Party. And in our city, it's no surprise that a party who delivered the private finance initiative, arm's length companies, now delivering public services, the privatisation of public space, and an economic regeneration strategy that largely depended on retail and hospitality growth, was unlikely to resist the implementation of those public sector cuts. I mean, the reality is that that has become an accepted responsibility for local Labour politicians in our community, that they deliver those cuts, and some with some enthusiasm, and I have to say, and that you know, that leaves a bad taste for all of us. The recent round of cuts will be felt hardest by those with disabilities, particularly in this round of cuts have been targets on mental health services. The working poor are going to be hit. There's going to be cuts in breakfast clubs, there's going to be increases in school meals. So when the Labour movement talks of mobilising against austerity, it's within this context, one of Labour disappointment, that our building blocks must be in this city. And that fact sits uncomfortably with me and with many in this room. So what does that renewal look like? You know, what challenge does that bring to our movement in terms of building and mobilising communities? Well, I do think that we need to renew our movement, and that means change. I think our movement does need to change. And I think that we need to break from how we look and feel to people. I think we need to, you know, our traditional garments of meetings, resolutions, motions, and formal structures. To be honest, they smell of the past, and a past that's disappointed in newer and younger generation. And I think we need to be honest with ourselves about that. So our tools must be different in building a movement against austerity, and new relations must be made with those who have been hit by the attacks and those who share a sense of social solidarity. And in Glasgow Trades Council, we've tried to reach out to those people by changing the way that we do business and by and the way that we show ourselves in our city. Particularly, it started around May Day, where we tried to look different and feel different. One of the ways we did that is by using different techniques on the stage and using films and acting in a way that felt more modern, but the other way we used it is by inviting particular communities of interest to lead our march. They weren't trade union communities. We had people who were fighting the closure of the Accord Centre. We had, last year, we invited the working class communities of people who were in recovery from addiction from drugs and alcohol in our city to lead our march, because we wanted to pay tribute to the work that they had done in their communities. And I have to say, we had one Labour MP who refused to march at the front because they didn't want to be associated with that type of people, and walked away and went to the middle of the march, and that's a true story, folks. That's one of the ways that we've tried to kind of change the way we look in our city and the way we feel in our city, and to resonate with the people who are struggling and facing the harshest cuts of austerity. We've also, we're not afraid to use populist measures. We have been inviting school choirs to welcome people into our meetings, and school bands. We had a meeting on Thursday there, and we had a public hearing into austerity, and we had a welcome from St Rock's Cayley band, which was fantastic, because we want to reach out the way. And we have one criteria when we look and examine what that we're going to do, and that is, does it move our movement out the way? Does it connect us with new communities? Are we meeting and speaking to new people? Because if it doesn't, we don't do it. Because if we're sitting in a room and we know all the activists in that room, then we've failed to grow and build. So we've also been holding public hearings instead of public meetings. So we invite anybody in our city who represents a community of interest to take part in a kind of themed public hearing. We've done one on the bedroom tax, did one on Thursday about the public sector cuts in our city, and they get 3 minutes to talk about what the impact is on their communities. And so they get to say, through their words and their style and the way that they're used to speaking, and we give them a public voice, and we give them a forum to be heard, and we give them a panel of politicians to hear them. And it's been really successful. It feels different, it's very participative, and it's brought us into work with a lot of different kind of groups that we wouldn't normally have worked with. Political discussion, political education is absolutely essential, but often people feel intimidated by formal kind of forums to do that, and they want that discussion to take place in a kind of informal way. So we need to create social gatherings so that people can have discussions where they don't feel intimidated. I can't tell you how intimidating you guys are. I can't even begin to explain it. It's a terrifying prospect for most people to come and play a part in a room like this. And we all know that this is a welcoming, comradely group of people, but it's simply the structure and how it feels, and that's how that resonates with people. So we've got to create informal places where people can talk about politics, and one of the ways we've done that is by forming a cycling club in the Trades Council. So we have a Clarion Cycling Club, which has been really, really successful, and we go out on social rides together. We do some political activity when we do that. We cycle to Forest Lane, the CND signs on our back for the anti-Tribe demo. We've done a cycling from one end of our city to the next. It's all about challenging the poverty and inequality that exists within our city. But it's more than that. It's created a space where people can just sit and talk and go to the pub afterwards and have a chat. We've had Northern Soul Nights, and we've had writers groups. Basically, we'll try anything that expands us out the way. So when people begin to look at our movement, when they see it, it reflects them back. And that's our challenge. I think our movement must reflect back to people so that they can identify with it and it can resonate with them in the same way that it did in my childhood in the 70s. For many of you, as you were kind of growing up and bringing up your families, the Labour movement resonated with you. Well, we see that new groups of people start to resonate with the Labour movement and reconnect with it through the activities that we undertake. And that's really important. So finally, I wanted to talk a wee bit about where I think the challenge lies in terms of the trade union movement and the Labour movement in Scotland, in terms of moving forward and how we should move forward. And And the Glasgow Trades Council has 3 motions at STUC, and 2 of them kind of their origins lie within the strategy that I've talked about. One of them is we've got the first ever cycling motion to the STUC, so I'm really delighted about that. The second one, and that's came out of those cycling activists who came together and said we want to take this into this trade union movement, our agenda, and see ourselves in the movement effectively. The second one is about insecure and vulnerable workers, which is a massive priority for us, and that's because, well, Jackson spelled it exactly, because of that experience is so overwhelming now, and it is on the increase. And it's not only the economic conditions that those workers experience that we think is important, it's the psychological and emotional effects of those experiences. So it's not just the fact that you're on 0 hours contract, it's the fact that you don't know your rota until the Sunday before you start working Monday, so you can't make any plans with any of your pals or your family. You start to disconnect with the people that you love and that you want to spend time with, and you feel a prisoner to the employer that you have. You can't make plans for the future because you don't know whether you're going to get 10 hours or 50 hours one week to the next. And that, for year after year after year, just totally undermines people's self-esteem and confidence in who they are. And I know that because as a full-time officer, I worked with 15 young people down at the Beardmore Hotel who were on a 0 hours contract, and we built for 2 years a tribunal case for them and the right to be recognised as employees rather than workers. And I saw the way that that had destroyed their sense of who they were, that they had come out of college and university relatively confident young people, and 4 years in a 0 hour contract, well, frankly, it had really damaged them, and they would talk about how that had affected them and how they felt about themselves. Now, the experience of getting justice from the employer was tremendous for them, and they spoke at the end of that about how that had kind of transformed their sense of self-worth, and how those things were actually more important than the £1.20 an hour more that they got, or the fact that they now got 2 weeks notice on their rota. I mean, those things were absolutely invaluable building tools, but for those individuals, that experience of being able to kind of take off the shackles of that oppression that their employer had put upon them with the way that they did business was really important. And we see that kind of narrative in the fast food movement in America, where people are taking up the chants of the civil rights movement when they march for justice in their workplaces. They're talking about dignity and about respect. And so I think that it's really important that we think about that, but of course organising those workers isn't easy. As everybody who is part of this movement will tell you, that's the hardest nut to crack. It doesn't start with standing outside the workplace signing people up and then going in to negotiate with an employer. It starts in cafes and dialogue and having a sense of kind of building those blocks. And the SEIU in America put £3 million into that. They said, you know what, we're going to invest in 2 years of calling into places and developing relationships so that we can have a base that we can actually start to talk about union mobilisation, because we understand that that's not going to happen, that our first place of contact has got to be about building a relationship with those workers, and they sent community organisers in to build that up. So I think we need to start looking at the resources we have in the trade union movement across Scotland and thinking about how we can strategically use them to reconnect with those kind of groups of workers. And I have to commend Unite's strategy in community membership. I think it's been a fantastic initiative. I have to commend the Bakers Union, who are offering fast food workers a reduced membership. I think it's £50 a month. I have to commend unions that are willing to structurally change the way that they do business to open themselves up to these groups of workers. And I think as a movement, we've got a responsibility to see where we can do that everywhere. And as you said, Jackson, it's not about fast food workers, it's also about call centre workers, it's about a whole raft of workers in everyday jobs that are now on 0 hour contracts. And I do agree that the issue is sectorial bargaining. I've heard you talk about that now for about 4 years, and I absolutely agree with you. I think it's a strategy that we need to go forward on, and it's a real test to the Scottish Government's and to the SNP's commitment to the issue of promoting workers' rights, to see if they're willing to put to really commit in that way. So finally, the last point I want to make. I sometimes, even though I'm talking about, kind of moving forward, I'm as fascinated by everybody else in this room about the history of our movement. And I was really interested in reading about how in the 30s the Communist Party built a mass movement, particularly in the East End of London, and the way that it developed a mass working class movement in communities. It really kind of belonged in communities, neighbourhoods and streets. So I spent a bit of time reading about that. I was kind of fascinated. What happened? How did it work? What made it work? And the thing that really stayed with me was the first thing that people did, and as a movement they decided to do one thing. And they said, what we're going to do is we're going to go door to door and we're going to tap on people's door and we're going to ask them one question, and the question they asked them is, how can we help you? And they listened. And I think that's got to be our starting point as a movement.